I asked some students in architecture, I told them that I was going to be interviewing you, and they're very excited. They're quite the staple for the young architects, aspiring architects. I asked them for some of the questions that they would love for someone with your skill set and your background to answer. If you don't mind, I'm going to ask them for the students who are watching right now, who will hopefully be entering to win this scholarship.
Okay, good.
Win this prize. So one of the questions is around the idea of interdisciplinary studies. When you yourself started as an architect, the boundaries of what architecture were probably very different than they are now. You obviously also have city planning under your belt, but that's more common now than ever before, the idea of interdisciplinary studies. Do you think that's a necessity in today's day and age?
Well, I think it depends on the student. I'd like to think it is important because, well, for example, just to give example of our office, early days we used to have a psychologist, social psychologist, philosopher, a social scientist in our group. Because, and when I went to McGill for my town planning, I didn't attend any architecture classes. and I attended.
Listen up, kids.
I attended a philosophy class and applied psychology, the social aspects of Canada, and they were much more sort of fulfilling for me to see the bigger picture. And planning does give an architect a bigger picture of how architecture itself fits in. And not that it should sort of blend into the environment, but it's part of the sort of exciting mix, and then to make a difference, I think becomes much more challenging. And so this is what I'm hoping will come out of it. But we'll see. I'm just as excited.
Okay, I'm going to ask you another question from students as well. Can you give your opinion on the resurgence of landscape architecture?
Oh, I'm not too sure about the word resurgence. Is that a Canadian attitude or North?
Why do you say that?
Because landscaping has been, for example, in Japan, always, it was always, man was always part of nature, and landscaping was part of nature, extending into, homes and community. So I could never see it as a resurgence. It's
always been there?
It's always been there, and we tended to sort of ignore it by concentrating on stuff that we could build. And and sometimes if you don't understand landscaping and nature, architecture becomes a mess.
Architects nowadays aren't taught necessarily to be master architects, and there's a lot more of a reliance on the engineers. So many developers of buildings are now doing projects without architects, and I think that's one of the biggest scares for students who are in architecture. There's been a conversation about the need for the architect. What's your opinion on that?
Well, part of this prize, this international prize, is to raise the aspiration of worldwide architects, because architects, tend to take a sort of what you call, they're not aggressive like the lawyers or MBAs or the engineers. So they sort of fall back, and as they fall back, they start to sort of argue between themselves and lowering the fees. And as they do that, there's less quality. There's, to survive, architects have to cut, labor, and as a result, we have, tremendously bad architecture. And so I think, architects should collectively stand up and be counted and fight back, or, in a few years, they'll disappear. This prize is part of that, sort of, hopefully, not aggressively, but to push towards a better future.
Wow, that's an incredible answer. And on that note, I'm going to push all the students who are watching this right now to make sure to enter for this contest, because that's an incredible platform.
Hopefully they do.